Hey friends and fans, welcome to Dave Talks Off Ukraine update for the 3rd of October 2025. I'm your host, the author David Applegate, author of the books The Boyhood Arcade, Power Games, Into the Earthbound, and The Erotic Tales from the Empire. Part 1 available now on Amazon. Thank you to all those who support the channel. If you'd like to support the channel, buy my books, buy my merch, join my patrons. All my links are in the link tree. As I've said, Putin has offered peace. Trump and Vance, of course, have a lot on their plate. I don't think they've responded yet. But however, the war of words from Zelensky is irrelevant. UK is in a crisis, and their words are irrelevant. Germany, irrelevant. Poland is irrelevant. They're all now panicking because they can't afford to continue this war. They don't know what to do. Even if they steal the Russian assets, what do they buy? A year, maybe 2? And they risk, what, escalation? Where Taiwan, the longer they, you do realize, the longer this war goes on, the more you put Taiwan, Korea, Japan at risk. Well, maybe Nepal or China may... What if China decides to send troops to Nepal to stabilise the situation? Although that's looking less and less likely every day. But China, what if China decides the only way it can grow its economy and get out of the mess it's in is to wipe all debts, and that is to go to war? What if this whole situation that is simply because the West just cannot accept European expansionism. Yet the Europeans keep talking about threats and destabilizations. Well, deal with the internal problems. Look at England. Almost every day now there's an incident. But Keir Starmer keeps trying to keep a lid on the situation, but millions are protesting, millions are waking up and realizing that the left have been using Ukraine as a distraction. And I'm sick of the but Tories argument. Most of the Tories are failed liberals, okay? Most of the people in the Tory party, straight out of the same university that produced Keir Starmer, that produced Rishi Sunak, that produced the architects of your own destruction. You are the architects of your own destruction. Your inability to pick good leaders comes from the fact that you are so misinformed. And the problem is the people who are trying to inform you are still the minority of voices. Now, fortunately, Trump was able to break through the noise. But right now, there's still a lot of noise. And that noise is coming from Europe. Trump is right. We do need a strong Europe. But NATO is picking the wrong enemies. NATO and its delusions. NATO's stuck in the past. Right? You have the left bleating about Nazis. You have Antifa bleating about fascists and Nazis. You have, of course, they're all trying to associate that demonic period of time, this evil of history, onto the right and onto Putin and onto Trump and at the same time, they forget that their great comrade G is friends with Putin. That their victim mentality is, look, Putin may not be a nice guy. He's not our president. He's not our problem. We shouldn't be picking the leaders of other countries. You're courting disaster if you continue down this path of self-righteousness. But the left, that's their only shtick. It's this self-righteous notion that they can create a better world. Now, the signs of hope is that negotiations, that Russia and Ukraine are still talking. Signs of hope, of course, when Ukrainian POWs are released on a humanitarian exchange with Russia. Often, however, we don't get the exact details. That's fine. War of words continues where Ukraine always blames Russia and Russia blames Ukraine. We don't know if it was a stray artillery shell or deliberate shelling, though we do know Ukraine has been caught shelling the Zaporozhye area before, cutting off external power to the power plants. And, of course, Ukraine is claiming Russia deliberately cut off the external powers and was preparing to connect the station to its own grid. Russia doesn't have control of all of Zaporozhye. And the Ukrainians have taken down a lot of the power lines in the area. There's no chance right now of any of this. This is all speculation. Regional security conferences are pointless because they won't talk to Russia. And they won't. And of course, Sweden and Finland are all rattling their sabers. And of course, France has made a stupid, bold move by escalating the war by taking a Russian so-called shadow fleet, which I believe was actually operated by Indian Chinese consortium. So what if it has Russian oil? It's outside your jurisdiction. This is the problem. France and Europe want to play world police. This is the point that Putin is making. And they are trying to cut off Russian oil to drive up the price of oil, so that the speculators know exactly where and when the price of oil are going to go up. This is why a free market... The problem isn't the free market, which should be driving prices down. The problem is the crony market, where the government is always driving prices up and calling it growth. Russia has said the European Union is delusional and cannot accept harsh reality. Of course, German Chancellor Merkel 2.0 keeps talking about this great agreement amongst European leaders to use frozen Russian assets. Well, if you had such grand plans, why do you have to keep repeating it every day? To normalise it to people so that they could say, oh, but we warned you, we told you we're going to do this. The people don't have any economic clue. They rely on these leaders, and the leadership deceives you. But I mean, you've got to wake up and realise the left are nothing but greedy assholes. Europe is run by a group of greedy, vote-rigging assholes. Okay? They have manipulated election after election. We have declassified documents that have been published that show the EU and various American governments have interfered in elections. But election interference, oh no. The left always claim that the right only get elected because they rigged the election. Well, then how did you win? If the right can rig elections, how can you win? And the same thing. You know, I don't think it's direct rigging. I think a lot of the time the left are apathetic and don't turn out to vote, and that's how the right get elected. But it's the same thing. I think the right is far more apathetic and have far less turnout. I think the people in the middle just punish both sides because they just they can't pick a side, so they just punish them both by seesawing between them. We can't seem to reconcile our beliefs so we can say, yes, as politician, I know what he stands for. You know with Labour, you don't know what they stand for. You know with the Democrats, they only stand for whatever gives them more power. This whole progressive movement is going to collapse in on itself. Alright, so we have movement on the Russian front. Not much, but some movement in the Sumy buffer zone. Same in Kharkiv, but it's not much. It's only a small amount. Alright. North of Kupiansk. North of Kupiansk, we see two areas of movement, but it's not really much. Not really much. So, in Kupiansk itself, the fighting for the centre of town continues. Russia's made no gains since yesterday, although, as you can see, they do they've made... no gains in Kupiansk, but they've made gains elsewhere. Not much. Alright, we move to the area north of Lyman, and again, very insignificant gains, but there is movement. Zakrin has all but, I think, pretty much taken. I think there's just this little area here on the outskirts that is still in Ukrainian hands. The same in other areas. The Russians have advanced further north of Seversk. They've taken more territory, and they've started moving, and they've made bold moves, quickly overrunning Ukrainian positions south of Seversk. They've made a lot of gains, rapid gains. North of Chasiv, the Russians have made gains. Chasiv is still... a little bit of the outskirts is still in Ukrainian hands. Not much is happening there. Not much is happening in the siege of Konsk. The artillery and missile exchanges continue. Same with the siege of Pokrovsk. Again, very little movement, very little gains. Mostly what you would call... on the periphery, as you can see here on the outskirts, and a little bit of movement north here, a little bit of movement west here. That's about it. This was a day ago. Ukraine claims to have liberated Dolopilia again. Again, Russia wasn't in Dolopilia, nor this 66 square miles. This area, again, this area here. No, Russia never wasn't there, so, yet again, Zelensky lies, but, the Ukrainian public, they can't see the war. They can't see this map, apparently. Apparently they, I don't know how much of Ukraine is complaining, because a lot of it could be propaganda and misinformation to mislead the Russians. So you never know what's really going on because the Western media cannot be relied on to tell the truth. But what we do see is little bits of gains here in the West. Russia's on the edge of Orikhiv. Again, fighting on the road to Zaporozhye, which is what led to the knocking out of power lines. Drone attacks on Dnipro again. Pulkovo, Kiev, of course. There was a prisoner exchange up here in the north. Drone attack on Odessa. The Russians had a big meeting in Skorsky to give Zelensky a middle finger about his... this is an old attack, isn't it? Yeah. No, smoke arising. Drone drone attacks, set fires. We don't know the extent of the damage. US government has suspended operations October 1st while the Congress has failed to fill a budget. Now, existing flights are believed to be carrying on. Regular monitoring of the Russian front is going on. Deliveries may be postponed. We'll see. According to London, they are trying to work out whether or not deliveries will be affected. The Telegraph has not gotten response. But of course, the problem is the Democrats are fear-mongering, and so is Labour, and so is the Western media, all trying to drum up this boogeyman of this big Russian threat. What, is Putin a paper tiger or a big threat? You know, this is the problem with politics. People get so infected by their hatred of that's not even based on anything real. And they're basing their hatred of a people and not the ideology. That's the problem. The ideology that people hated Russia for in the past is gone and infected the West. And yet they can't see it. For some stupid reason, they think that they're better. No, you're just the same as the same. You're the American left, the British left, the Italian left. They're all the same. They're no better, no different from the young, naive Russians who followed these charismatic leaders to their own detriment because they thought they were making the world a better place. And this hero complex, this main character syndrome, this white savior complex, which is actually not white savior, it's a messiah complex. You find it in the Middle East in particular. Heck, a lot of Islam's built on the messiah complex. All of communism throughout the third world is the messiah complex. That you could be a messiah and save the world. Play God of other people's lives. And Viktor Orban is calling this out as bullshit. Right? That Brussels cannot... the Brussels calculation that Russia will be economically exhausted is bullshit. The EU itself has spent billions and for unexpected results. They've destroyed their own economy. Remember, since 2022, they've already spent nearly 180 billion, and now they want to spend another 180 billion. European Parliament's on the verge of no confidence in the entire Commission over Ukraine. Many think this is an attempt to oust Orban because they want to dissolve, and this isn't on the left. They think, we dissolve the European Parliament, we get rid of the right wingers, and we can finally fix all the world's ills. The left are the cause of most of the world's problems. Admit it, own it, understand it. Because the reality is, Russia's offered peace, Europe won't sit down with Russia, so how can you trust them when Europe won't sit down with Russia? Right? Zelensky refuses to negotiate, cut him off. Okay? He's clearly an obstacle to peace. He should have no bearing or stand in being president of Ukraine because the Constitution wasn't... constitutionally, the powers should have been handed... After 90 days, the powers should have been handed back to the Parliament. He should have stepped down. But he won't. Keeps promising to step down, only if the war goes his way. Of course. That's the problem with all these autocrats, is they have to get their way on everything. Russia has offered a peaceful solution. Because Western policymakers don't want to hear what they want to hear. They don't want to hear that Russia's not planning to attack NATO, that Russia doesn't want to even take all of Ukraine. That rather than waving a sword at the West and making threats, he merely said that we'll defend ourselves if threatened. But for years, he's pointed out the UK and EU security debates have been dominated by a scenario of Russian expansion, but it's actually Europe that's been expanding into Eastern Europe. Western Europe is domestically unstable thanks to mass migration and poor family planning, poor family policies, poor economic policies, poor policies on India, China, and Africa. Failed to realise the significance of now. The corruption in Africa is the problem. Okay? African development. They get together with the World Economic Forum and all these other organisations. They say, please, 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 come and develop industry. So they come in, start developing industry. And then for the next 20 years, the African nations keep the wages low so they can keep their development status, so they can keep the aid flowing, because the aid is worth more than their GDP. Most West African nations' GDP is high. We sell you 60 billion in gas and oil. And that's it. That's all they got. They can't develop industry. They don't have the mentality to develop. And the industries they do develop are so are eventually overrun by crime or communism. Any African nation that starts getting successful has either an Islamic uprising or a communist revolution. Don't believe me? Just look at the history of Africa. Now, Europe isn't the only one who's failed in Africa. Russia and China have both failed in Africa. India is failing in Africa. Everybody seems to think they can do better. The best thing we can do for Africa is to let it keep failing and ignore their bleating. Stop giving them... The world collectively should tell Africa to go fuck itself. Collectively, we have better technology. We don't need Africa anymore for resources. We could develop and recycle what's left of our resources and expand on them through other technological solutions, if the West is willing. But the West isn't willing to engage in, because they want their because you have too many people in the West who want a medal from because the universities keep indoctrinating kids into thinking that, oh, you're intelligent, you're smarter than other people. You should, this ego. And the ego is the root cause of this conflict. And the West refuses to recognise the reality that Russian troops are advancing along multiple combat lines still. And that Ukrainians are dying for the ego of Zelensky, who, of course, there are many losses that are smaller than those of the armed forces, according to Putin. Now, I wouldn't say multiples, but there has been times where Ukraine has lost thousands in a day and the Russians have lost hardly any. But it's not... And that Ukraine's losses exceed their capacity to... Yes, for months we've heard from the Ukrainian opposition that they cannot raise enough troops and that they have nearly 1 million men of fighting age outside of Ukraine who refuse to return home. But that's their right. Remember, America during the Vietnam War. Oh, yeah, but, all these people... You make fun of these people who left, but you didn't need them. Ukraine didn't need all those people who left. They could have halted the Russian advance and then negotiated a swift, peaceful end to the negotiation, realising that Russia was willing to aggressively uphold the previous peace agreement where Russia agreed to halt the fighting in the Donbass if you held elections, which Ukraine did not. Until the West widely knows enough about the Ukraine war, we're going to continue to have belly-aching liberal fascists who keep bleating about how we have to defeat Putin before he takes over the world. Because liberals are immature. Sorry, liberals are weak. Weak people are immature. Weak people are hyperbolic. They give in to their emotions. They're weak to their pride. And of course, they always exaggerate. Everything's an existential threat to them. Everything is a panic because panic is a addictive drug, just like doom and gloom. Now, Russia has again today targeted Ukrainian facilities, and according to the Russians yet again, without verification, that they've struck their targets. Again, mostly because Ukraine is about as opaque as mud. Now, one of the things is what's to Russian advantage is their long-range artillery. Now, this is a weird setup. It's called a mortar, believe it or not. It is the 203 millimeter. Now, these guys here are is the loader, and he's the firing officer. Okay, this barrel actually lies down here, right? And then the machine at the front ups and loads in and then flops down, and then the barrel flops up and over and fires. Now, they are transported inside, but you don't want to be inside when that thing reverberates. It's a you've heard a 130. If you've heard a 155 or 153 go off, think of twice the volume. It is like a jet engine farting. It's a huge sonic boom. Now, it's one of Russia's key artillery, and again, Russia's key strategy relies on mobile artillery, mobile missiles, and mobile air defenses. Their drone strategy is to fill the gap between the escalation of armor. Now, Ukraine has a lot of armor, mostly, though, infantry fighting vehicles, compared to Russia. But Russia is wearing them down. Russia is not engaging Ukraine with its full force and has a public mandate to only, and this is which is the weird thing, they want the buffer zone, yeah. Now, I don't know how much of this is going to be honoured or true, but right now, most of the leaks, or what would you call it, releases from Russian bloggers seem to indicate that the Russian forces seem to be moving down south, that they're going to cut through the Lyman area to cut off the Ukrainians and force a general retreat of the Ukrainian army. And once they force a general retreat of the Ukrainian army, then it looks like Zelensky will be forced to the negotiating table. Whereas on the Ukrainian side, they want to threaten Moscow and more of the Russian oil facilities in order to force a general Russian retreat. So both sides right now seem to be general strategy is to force the other to retreat from the battlefield, with Russia given the greater odds of bringing down the Ukrainian economy, because the Ukrainian economy is dead. Zelensky's only prolonging this war to get revenge on Russia for losing. And that's what a lot of people have to come to grips with, that Zelensky has lost the war and that he is trying to get revenge on Russia, prolong it as long as he can, and then scurry away like a cockroach. And, of course, once Ukraine is in the hands of the Ukrainian opposition, the Ukrainian people will blame the Ukrainian opposition for not saving them from Zelensky, just like how they blamed the previous government and all flocked to Zelensky as their saviour. The Ukrainian people are the architects of their own doom, and that's pretty much the same throughout Western Europe right now. There are very few good leaderships out there like Orban. I thought Tusk was going to bring a breath of fresh air to Poland. So far, he's failed to negotiate the Eurocrats and has fallen on his face many times by siding with Ukraine for that EU money. That's going to dry up very soon. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe, and please support the channel. You can support me on Patreon, buy my books, buy my merch. All my links are in the link tree, description below, in my profile, or scan the QR code on the screen. Thank you to each and every one of you. I appreciate you all. See you in the next video, and bye for now.